Welcome to our lesson on integers and absolute value. It's kind of the starting point for our integers unit. And we're going to start with some vocabulary. Two simple ones. A positive integer is an integer that is greater than 0. So anything that is larger than 0. So we have 1, 2, 17, 976, 1 million. Any of those numbers are positive integers, numbers that we're used to. A negative integer is an integer that is less than 0. And we know that they're less than 0 because they're going to have a negative sign on them. That's how we kind of tell. So it could be -1, -2, -3, -147, anything that is less than 0. So positive integers are simply that. They're positive numbers greater than 0, and negative numbers are less than 0. Then we get to absolute value. So absolute value is the distance a number is from 0. Distance is always a positive number. So think of walking to a friend's house. Maybe one friend is 3 blocks to the left from your house, one friend is 3 blocks to the right. They're both 3 blocks away from your house. We don't care what direction you happen to have to go. That's what absolute value is. How many steps, how many places away from 0 is that number? We're not concerned with how far it is or which direction it is from 0. So -6. These bars around our number, we read that as absolute value. The absolute value of -6, meaning how far is -6 away from 0? Well, -6 is 6 steps away from 0. The absolute value, those two vertical lines, absolute value of 8.2. How far is 8.2 away from 0? Well, it's 8.2. Here, the absolute value of -3/4. How far is -3/4 away from 0 on a number line? Well, that would just be 3/4 away. So we don't care whether it's left or right on our number line, positive or negative. We just care how far it is away from 0. What would it take to get back to 0? You'll notice that every time we find absolute value, that number is a positive number. Like talked about, distance is always positive. So the absolute value of -3, so how far is -3 away from 0? Well, it's 3 steps away. And how far is 3? What is the absolute value of 3? Well, 3 is 3 steps away from 0 because they are opposites. They both have the same absolute value. One is 3 steps to the left, one is 3 steps to the right, but they both have the same absolute value because they are opposites from each other. They're equal distances away from 0. All right, last little bit. Absolute value should be treated like parentheses. Sorry, that was a really bad T there. Meaning you do whatever's inside of the absolute value first, and then you tackle whatever is left in the problem, just like order of operations. Therefore, you must evaluate the absolute value first before moving on to the rest of the problem. So, for instance here, the absolute value is around the whole problem. So think of like parentheses. You have to do inside the parentheses first. 8 plus 3 is 11. And now I want to find the absolute value of it. How far is 11 away from 0? Well, that's 11 steps away. Here, do the problem inside the absolute value first. 5 times 4 is 20. Then I want to find the absolute value of the number. How far is 20 away from 0? Well, it's 20 steps away. And then I finish out the rest of the problem. 20 plus 3 is 23. Here, the next one, again, tackle inside the parentheses first and then see what's still left. Or sorry, not inside parentheses, inside the absolute value. So inside the absolute value is -9. The absolute value of -9 is 9. It's 9 steps away from 0. But we want its opposite. So that negative sign out front can be read as we want the opposite of whatever comes out of those absolute values. So the opposite of 9 is -9. So the absolute value turns it into a positive, because absolute value is always a positive number, and then we want to switch it to its opposite with that negative on the outside. Next one, you'll notice that in this case, each of the numbers are in their own absolute value. So think of them as their own parentheses. We got to do each of those first. So what's the absolute value of negative 16? Well, it's 16 places away from 0. What's the absolute value, those vertical bars, of negative 12? Well, it's 12 steps away from 0. You'll notice that every time we take the absolute value of a number, we get rid of the absolute value bars. We've taken care of that part. And then we just come back and finish the problem. 16 plus 12 is 28. That's how we use absolute value. We take care of anything inside the absolute value symbols first, then we find the absolute value of that number, and then we go ahead and finish out the rest of the problem. And that'll be something that we practice here today.